Listeners, welcome to an emergency episode of the Bharatiya Janata podcast. Emergency for two reasons. Reason number one is because
इंदिरा वाला इमरजेंसी थे ना
वही है
आज बहुत मूवी
after
बन रहा है आजकल
like a
आजकल
very
उसमें
massive demand from our listeners. All my heroes are together missing Aditya, Lord Aditya, a comment on our last YouTube video. And then I, as a right wing, don't feel represented if Aditya is not there, Lord Aditya. So to
तो उसको
comment back,
रिप्रेजेंट कैसे फील होता है मतलब मेरे को ये नहीं
तेरे को
समझ में
सोचना पड़ेगा ये इस बारे में.
I know
Right?
this is
हाउ डज ही
हाँ.
हाउ डज ही और शी फील रिप्रेजेंटेड
आई एम वेरी श्योर ही
ही है
ओ क्योंकि उसके बाद किसी उस वहीं पे किसी ने इस्लामो कम्युनिस्ट भी बोला अपन को. तो तो and we obviously have slightly more important, just slightly more important than Aditya, Kunal Purohit with us, who is not just replacing Nishant but is replacing him with a very heavy presence of his because I even need to say because Kunal, much like Aditya, you are also a very high demand in at least in our Discord group. Like a few different people reached out to me, not like today, like from 3-4 महीने से from since your book has been doing the rounds कि भाई इसको लाओ. And I don't know if you know, but I've mentioned you on the pod a few times as well.
Oh, I didn't know this. No.
Yeah, I've
missed
mentioned
it.
you as a flex कि अरे Kunal Purohit follows us ऐसा करके.
अच्छा.
So welcome to this episode. I hope we have an engaging discussion, but I more so than that, I hope कि कुछ हमारे वहाँ कहते थे कि जबलपुर में जहाँ कॉलेज के दोस्त बैठते थे ना कि आज शाम को बैठ के गम गलत करते हैं. तो आई होप कि गम गलत कर सके.
गम का साथी रम है. रम
बस
तो
अब
नहीं है
वो
लेकिन हम तो है.
बस वही है.
But thank you. I mean, this is like a childhood dream come true, guys.
चाइल्ड ड्रीम.
मैं तो कल से फ्लेक्स कर रहा हूँ कि भाजपा पे आने वाला हूँ मैं, तो लोगों को बता दिया है. अब मोदी जी की तरह वो लोग भी मतलब मन की बात टाइप वो लोग इवेंट करेंगे जब भी ये बाहर आए. And we'll have all of these events where people are listening to it.
Long years ago, we made a trip with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge.
8 नवंबर 2016 की रात्रि को 12 बजे से
चीफ मिनिस्टर के लिए मेरा एक ही संदेश है कि वो राज धर्म का पालन करें.
हार्डवेयर वालों की सोच क्या होती है, हार्ड वर्क वालों की सोच क्या होती है.
अरे ये ना पंजाब की खुशबू.
अच्छा ऐसे ही शुरू कर देगा क्या? चलो ठीक है. सो इन दिस पॉडकास्ट एपिसोड एवरीवन क्लेम्ड दैट और ही सेड कि एवरीवन क्लेम्स दैट पीपल हेट देयर जॉब. तो ही मेट अ गाय हु इज लाइक अ लीड गिटारिस्ट और लीड वोकलिस्ट in a very like niche band, and this guy Chris Finn नाम है उसका, and he like says at every concert of his कि I cannot believe how lucky I am that I'm doing this करके.
Okay.
So then he traces his life, and what you find out, what the summary of that is that if you are doing something just because you enjoy it and you don't care about how successful you are or not, that's the best space to be. And the long story is this is the BJPod. Like we don't really like, even if tomorrow like 4 people end up listening to us, we'll be like fine, because at the core it's basically some of us are and our friends just taking out the bhadas that we have.
So it started off basically like a therapy session. Like I think 2019 में just around. So the story is that we were on this News Laundry WhatsApp group, which was getting like too much to handle beyond a point.
Even
so
that was getting like difficult.
Okay.
So there was this News Laundry US Canada subscribers WhatsApp group, which was like a lot of them.
That is run by News Laundry.
Yeah. By them.
Okay. Like
for subscribers, like
okay.
so to organize meetups and stuff, right? So
Right.
it was not moderated by anyone within News Laundry, so it was just very organically, it used to take shape of its own. So progressively what we saw was that a lot of them had subscribed to News Laundry probably during the UPA days, where it was anti-establishment, and then the establishment was anti-establishment used to suit them probably, like
right.
so a lot of the narrative used to become too much to handle, or wahan pe matlab we couldn't like keep it to ourselves. So then we just decided, this was around the Ram Mandir verdict came out in 2019.
Okay.
So that is when we were like, chalo kahin to badas nikalna hai. That's how it began. So but like वो verdict के time पे like if you had told me that when the Mandir is getting inaugurated, we'd still be doing a podcast, I wouldn't have believed.
So you know the kind of people who listen to us,
Right.
the kind of
Yeah,
people
yeah,
listen.
of course, yeah.
In fact, how I found out about you, to be very honest, is actually someone on on our Discord told us about one of your articles first, or I think the HPOP book, one of the two, I don't remember, but anyway.
Okay.
And then I
Okay.
think recently you met Bhai. And he's a great guy. I wish he was my dad. Yeah, yeah, but
Right.
we are same, like all three of us are
Right.
same ages, right?
Right,
But when you meet people who are kind of that age and still with that kind of disposition, थोड़ा अच्छा लगता है.
100%.
So
Very kind man. Neil, I mean, he
yeah,
I think he waited for a while. I was signing books. I was
Yeah.
signing copies of my books in Mumbai. He was there. He saw it on Twitter. He came all the way, waited and chatted. I mean, extremely, I think, caring about what's happening in the country. And it's rare to find people of that generation who still are.
Exactly. And the thing is, sometimes I just like a son would, I disappoint him so much. He'd reach out to me with like these requests. Because, I write sometimes like, and he'll be like, कि राज इस पे कुछ लिखने का. The thing is that it's not easy, right? Unless you have like an internal,
course.
like
Yeah,
some, monologue / prep. It's difficult to do that. तो
100%.
बहुत डिसअपॉइंट किया मैंने उनको. बट मैंने कभी कभी ये सोचा है, ऐसा सपना है मेरा कि कभी भी हम लोग इंडिया में होंगे और हमारे जो कुछ फेवरेट लोग हैं ना, उन लोग जो भी जिस भी सिटी में, जैसे फॉर एग्जाम्पल बॉम्बे में यू और बैंगलोर में आकार भाई, we'll meet them and we'll do like whoever listens to us come around, we'll talk, ऐसा कुछ at some point.
At some point,
But
मतलब,
let's see
तब
how
तक
that
हम रहे
goes.
तो ठीक है, मतलब हाँ.
मतलब हम तो रहेंगे, आप अपने लास्ट टाइम को भूलिएगा मत.
True. हम तो नहीं भूलेंगे यार, वो भूले तो ठीक है.
Then there was no one left for me. वहां पे अपन खड़े हैं. निमोलार की लास्ट लाइन है पर.
In fact, what I do is on long
हम्म.
drives family के साथ मैं लगा देता हूँ and people listen to it.
मुझे
So,
इस चीज के बारे में थोड़ा सा डर लगता है कि हम लोग तो बस थोड़ा लुड़ू वुड़ू ये सब ऐसा कुछ बोल देते हैं ना, थोड़ा
थोड़ा सा
उसमें वो बीप करना
ठीक
शुरू
है.
करना पड़ेगा.
नहीं
बहुत
ठीक है.
गुस्सा आता है कभी कभी यार, क्या करूं.
नहीं ठीक है, that's fine. I think it adds to it. मतलब वो बस यही है कि I mean I hope that more people listen to this stuff because I think as you said ना, ये honestly एक therapy session type हो गया थोड़ा सा लोगों के लिए. One of the first things my family when they heard this and they said, "Oh, these guys even staying in India." I said I don't think they're staying in India. मतलब ये तो बहुत initial episodes की बात है जब I didn't know. But I said I don't think they live in India. Which is true, right? You guys are not around.
None of us live in India. I think that's all that. Well, one of us is always in India, it seems. Like right now, Nishant is. But
वो अच्छा.
but
मतलब जो
like,
भी इंडिया में होता है वो
नहीं आता है.
वो participate नहीं करता. Although I know Aditya, you did some from Dombivli, ना? I remember one episode where you said घर में कुछ चल रहा है.
That was around Ramnavami.
अच्छा, that was the
last
year.
Ramnavami.
आदित्य तो इंडिया में गया अपने घर के बाहर पानी पूरी खाने के, उसको वहां पे भी लेजर शो दिख गया. मतलब ये तो हालत है.
मिसल पाव
not पानी पूरी.
Yeah, Aditya family still in Dombivli?
हाँ.
Was
जब तक मोदी जी जाए.
Not just now. My family, extended family, मतलब पिछले 2 generation से डोंबिवली में.
Oh wow, अच्छा. My mama and all. I used to spend all my summer vacations there.
In fact, मेरा स्कूल में पुरोहित नाम सरनेम से मेरा एक kind of like a batchmate type है. I don't even know, like you have nothing.
कर्नल पुरोहित के साथ भी मेरा कोई लेना देना
कोई नहीं है.
पुरोहित तो खतरनाक है.
That पुरोहित that I was referring to is of a very different political dispensation.
Absolutely. I think most people in Dombivli are. मतलब it's a gad, man. Like it's unshakable.
But Senagad traditionally.
But now I think I mean at least like in the last few visits I've seen that BJP.
One thing that I want to say is if you go back and listen to like our initial episodes that Aditya is talking about, we didn't have like a theme track or anything. So every episode, our title track was a new H-pop Rocky Mittal song. So we have been.
I didn't know this.
Yeah, so if you go to like our first few episodes, every episode is either Rocky Mittal or वो
before we
एक नारी बन के झांसी की रानी.
So before we actually knew the term H-pop back then. So this is
okay.
So I used to like.
Wow.
So I hate watch a lot of writing.
He's famous for that.
Of course, I know this.
So I used to get so Rocky Mittal is someone I found around 2014 when the campaign was
Wow.
actually on. So,
Right.
but I didn't really know. I wasn't really aware that there's an entire ecosystem around it. It's only
Yeah.
like
Yeah.
so.
That's the
So
thing.
how
I
did
think
you
people
get
who
to the
knew.
whole H-pop idea?
No,
Like,
so that's the thing. I think people who knew about, I mean, I remember when I first, I think, put it on Twitter because I was reporting in Jharkhand and I came back and the piece was about something else. It was about how Ram Navami festivities were being weaponized. उसमें मैंने एक एस्पेक्ट ऐसे ही डाल दिया था कि एक्चुअली म्यूजिक इज ऑल्सो वन वे इन विच इट हैपेंस. तो वो मैंने उसका एक ट्विटर थ्रेड बनाया था एंड आई वाज ब्लोन बाय द, आई मीन यू नो, बाय द रिसेप्शन इट गॉट, इन द सेंस दैट एक तो रिप्लाईज इतने सारे आए. And then so many people wrote to me with links saying, ki, you know, I'm hearing this guy, I've heard this guy, I've heard this woman. But they all thought that these were all individual creators who, you know, who just strongly believed in the idea. तो इसीलिए उनको करना था बस. I don't think, you know, people realize that there was actually, as you said, a very, very conducive ecosystem for this kind of work to happen, to be facilitated and to flourish. More importantly, मतलब, you know, करना तो ठीक है, but the fact that it gains so much of acceptance is one thing. I mean, and it's that Jharkhand trip where I also discovered what was happening because I'd gone to cover a hate crime. वहाँ एक hate crime हुआ था झारखंड में. एक there is a town called Gumla. I don't know if you guys have heard of this, but you know, I went there and I saw again Ram Navami के दिन पर एक मस्जिद के बाहर there was a procession which was going to pass by. और गुमला में एक बहुत पुराना ट्रेडिशन था कि, you know, as in a lot of other places actually, where the local Muslims would gather outside the mosque, you know, they would welcome these guys, the processionists, उनको थोड़ा सा दूध, वो गुलाब वाला वगैरह वगैरह देते थे, फूल देते थे, and then the procession would pass by. और उस दिन, and this is a couple of years before I had gone, so I had gone in 2019, I think this had happened in 2018 or 17 if I'm not wrong. तो उस दिन वो प्रोसेशन आया हर साल की तरह, लेकिन उसमें एक गाना बजा दिया किसी ने as soon as the procession came close to the mosque. और वो गाने का, you know, no one knew what song that was, but the words that caught everyone's attention were मुल्ले की टोपी गिरा दो, you know, something to the effect. तो उसमें वो पूरा माहौल बिगड़ गया and there was a riot that could have happened because the local Muslims, you know, started saying, "Arey, what the hell is this?" You know, and Ramnami processions there, if you guys know, are like tens of thousands of people strong. You know, they're not, मतलब बॉम्बे में 200-300 लोग आते हैं, वैसा नहीं होता. तो वहां तो ऐसा था कि कुछ भी हो सकता था. But thankfully the police intervened. Thankfully, you know, sensible community elders came and said, "Boss, इसको बंद करो." And the procession passed by. But a couple of guys, in fact, 3 people from that procession were going back that same evening. वो खत्म हुआ, उसके बाद वो घर वापस जा रहे थे, where they found this Muslim young guy talking to a Hindu girl. और वहीं उसको इलेक्ट्रिक पोल पर बांध के उसको मार दिया उन्होंने. And the tragic part of this was that they knew who this guy was. वो उसको पहचानते थे. You know, they knew, वो उसकी दुकान में, उसके फादर की दुकान है, अभी भी है गुमला के मेन जहाँ मस्जिद है वहीं आसपास ही है. तो रेडीमेड गारमेंट्स की शॉप है. You know, they're known people. तो उसके दुकान में जाते थे. They used to know him from school. So they had all of these links with this guy. His name was Mohammed Shalik. लेकिन फिर भी मतलब वो उस माहौल में उन्होंने कुछ ज्यादा सोचा नहीं. उन्होंने कहा ये तो लव जिहाद कर रहा है. And that is what it is. I mean, so that really was the night, and I say this in the book as well, that was the night that the idea was born, because I said, यार ये क्या गाने हैं, मतलब, you know, I'd never heard of them. I'd never even known the existence of this pop culture. तो मैंने कहा ये क्या है. And then that night I just stayed up, I started scrolling the internet, and I was horrified, to be very honest, to see कितना ज्यादा इसका जो एक्सपांस था वो इतना ज्यादा था कि हर चीज पर गाने बन रहे थे.
मतलब having grown up in Bombay, मतलब I wasn't aware of like growing up anything of this kind except for the fact that वो flavor of the season song गणेश चतुर्थी में वो उस ट्यून में गाने रेट्रोफिट होके कुछ
जी
बनते थे,
जी जी हाँ.
भक्ति गीत
Yeah,
टाइप का, ठीक है.
yeah.
But that apart, like how organically like all of this flows into each other, like 2014 lead up this Rocky Mittal guy, for example, like very niche and very like it's a very Modi centric, like 56 इंच का सीना, फिर at the most पाकिस्तान को सबक सिखाएंगे, मतलब these are the lyrics and how that organically flows into then Hindutva, फिर anti-Muslim rhetoric, and then all of them kind of like feed off from each other.
So I think what it started off, and this is not something that I've studied a lot in terms of its arc, but I think it started off being that, you know, being this ridiculously almost funny sort of rhetoric around वो मतलब अभी भी ऐसे गाने हैं कि वो पाकिस्तान में न्यूक्लियर बम गिराएंगे, वहां मंदिर बनाएंगे, थिंग्स लाइक दैट, very outrageous sounding things which people said अरे क्या है ये बकवास है, and people would laugh it off and stuff. But then I think they got better. Then they realized that actually there is an audience to this.
ऑटो ट्यून भी
which
आ गया फिर।
हाँ
Auto-tune
ऑटो
भी आ
ट्यून भी आ गया।
अभी
बहुत आसान हो गया ये करना।
सबसे ज्यादा स्कैरी पता है क्या है? रिसेंटली जो मैंने देखा है, आई ऑन ट्विटर, आई सॉ on two different occasions, two videos. One is from, I think, the after kind of party of after that India cadets take their walk, right? उसके evening में जो
हाँ
like they do like a dinner get together.
जी जी जी
And the other was in the National Law University graduation ceremony. In both these events, they were playing वो मेरे भारत का बच्चा बच्चा जय जय श्री राम
जय
बोल
श्री
and
राम।
everyone is dancing. And I'm
Absolutely.
like, well, at this point अभी कुछ लगता नहीं है, अभी मतलब
And the
लगता
state
भी है, but it's yeah.
and the state aesthetics also kind of plays into all this, right? The laser shows, it's like tailor made for each other.
Absolutely. Yeah. मतलब आप बिलीव नहीं करोगे, अभी मैं देख रहा था, सो अगेन दिस इज द ट्रेजेक्टरी ऑफ इट, सो इट स्टार्ट्स ऑफ बीइंग outrageous, then it gets better and better, where they're making more intelligent sounding, but again the rhetoric remains pretty much the same कि मुसलमान ऐसे है वो, but the words get slightly more sophisticated, the tunes, as we said, they get better. और अब ऐसा हुआ है कि नाउ इट इज हिंदुइज्म स्लैश हिंदुत्व वाला एक फेज आ गया है, वेयर समवन कैन से भारत का बच्चा बच्चा जय श्री राम बोलेगा, मतलब उसमें हम मुसलमान को थोड़ी गाली दे रहे हैं। सो नाउ इट्स रीच दैट स्टेज वेयर देयर आर सो मेनी ऑफ दीज प्लेयर्स, और मैंने इनफैक्ट एक आर्टिकल किया अल जजीरा पे कल शाम को आया, where I have basically gone through Pradhan Mantriji's Twitter timeline. And I don't know if you guys have noticed, but I mean, he's been obviously doing a temple run. पर वो बेचारे उसमें भी समय निकाल कर he has been tweeting about भजन, राम भजन। तो हर दिन, मतलब मैंने परसों तक तो मैंने काउंट किए थे, उन्होंने बेचारे ने 16 राम भजन ट्वीट किए मोदी जी ने।
18 घंटे काम करना पड़ता है यार,
हाँ,
there is
18
so
घंटे
much.
काम करने के बाद 16 राम भजन 1 जनवरी से ट्वीट किए हैं। फिर उन्होंने बेचारे हमारे लिए, बिकॉज वी आर जस्ट नॉट एबल टू डू ऑल ऑफ दिस, ही हैज मेड अ प्लेलिस्ट ऑफ 62 राम भजन्स स्लैश हिंदुत्व सॉन्ग्स, राइट? एंड ही इज आल्सो ट्वीटेड इट आउट कि भाई आप लोग ये सुनिए, मतलब व्हाट आर यू गाइस डूइंग।
तो हमारे अनूप जलोटा भी वही है, ओबामा भी वही है, मतलब सब वही है।
सब बात वही है कि so this man knows the value of symbolism, the value of proper symbolism, and the thing is that he understands. So when you were talking about this, right? The both of you grew up in Bombay. I grew up in Jabalpur. So what I have seen is
सॉरी, डोंबिवली
some
ना आदित्य?
अरे आदित्य is डोंबिवली, that doesn't count, right? Okay.
नहीं, हमारा डोंबिवली हमारा है, अरे सरी।
अच्छा ठीक है। अखंड बॉम्बे में आता है कि नहीं आता?
अखंड बॉम्बे आए बॉस ये।
Okay. So
There is a definition MMR में।
MMR।
अच्छा, वो एनसीआर जैसा कर दिया क्या तुम लोगों ने?
नहीं है।
अच्छा। तो जबलपुर में क्या होता है वो तो सुनो कि ना, so even when I was like in school and everything, right? Her Dashera, Navratri, and Ram Navami season, usually Navratri mein, there would be like, just like you mentioned about Ganesh, there would be a bunch of new songs that will come out. And in fact, one of the most famous singers when I was kind of in high school or college वाले में जा रहा था, was her name is, I'm sure she's still there, Shehnaz Akhtar. So Shehnaz Akhtar was singing a lot of these songs. But at that point, it was very like, that was niche. And I think very limited to that area. Maybe it would go into what you would call the Bundelkhand area of UP as well, but not beyond that. But abhi it has, interestingly, like all of that has kind of coalesced into where God and regime and the man, all of them have fused together. और वो बहुत इंटरेस्टिंग है क्योंकि I mean, see, so as you have said it, that there is a like एक सोचा समझा effort behind it, but there is some amount of like organic development as well, I feel.
100%।
मतलब वो जो लेजर शोज चलता है इनका, उसमें जगजीत सिंह के गजल तो नहीं चल सकते, मतलब उसमें तो हिंदू पॉप ही फिट होगा, और तो हिंदुत्व पॉप के अलावा और कुछ फिट हो ही नहीं सकता है उसी सिस्टम में।
नहीं, I mean, so
Hmm.
see, the thing is,
Hmm.
I think no one can deny कि ये गाने बन रहे हैं because there is an audience for it. आप कितना ही उसको समझो ना, प्रधानमंत्री भी ट्वीट कर ले, पर वो अगर गाने अच्छे नहीं है तो पीपल विल नॉट लिसन टू इट. इट्स नॉट लाइक मोदी जी ने कहा है तो हम दिन में 10 बार सुनेंगे. So they will not listen to it. The thing is, people enjoy these songs. They somehow touch a chord somewhere, and they're extremely tappy. I mean, that you'd love to sort of be ड्राइविंग, या फिर आपको अगर वो रेव वाला एटमॉस्फेयर चाहिए तो आप वो गाने लगाओगे, डीजे बीट्स के साथ आएगा. So there are different kinds of moods that these songs
Yes.
also cater to.
बिकॉज
ये
अच्छा, अभी ये जो सुन रहे हो, सुना है क्या तुम लोगों ने, जो इंस्टाग्राम में पॉपुलर है, राम आएंगे तो मैं कुछ करूंगी क्या,
हाँ हाँ हाँ,
आंगन सजाऊंगी
राम
या समथिंग,
आंगन सजा हो गया. इट इज अ
राइट?
मैसिवली वायरल सॉन्ग.
Yeah,
मतलब हर
and
जगह, हर
it's
जगह.
soft. It's
Yeah,
soft
very
in
soft,
nature, right?
very soft.
So now it's a whole parallel industry that is there, that exists. Now the big question that I have is, well, it, are we feeling it's at its peak because of all the things that are going to happen tomorrow, or is it just something that was kind of that just happened, like like how much of the H pop happening and the rise of Modi are planned? I don't think, like, my thesis is that a lot of it is just him being right at the right place at the right time also, like
बट
social
रघुपति राघव
media.
राजाराम या
हाँ,
वैष्णव जनतों का यूज
वो नहीं हो चलेगा
इज
ना,
नहीं
लेकिन
नहीं मैं बोल रहा हूँ इज इन इट्स ओन वे विथ इट्स ओन सेट ऑफ आइडियल्स इन इट्स वॉट
हम्म,
एवर द स्टोरी दैट ही हैड इन
हम्म,
हिज माइंड was H pop of its time. मतलब it depends on the
this
ideals and
is
the
this
story
is a
that you
very
would
good point.
want to project onto it, right?
नहीं यार, but so even, I mean, if you look back at the history of music and poetry both, and I mentioned some of this in the book, कि आप देखोगे कि colonial era में जो poetry बन रही थी, some of it had its referencing in Hindu religion and mythology and things.
हम्म,
और उसका यूज उन्होंने किया था कि भाई इनको बाहर फेंको, दैट दिस इज व्हाट बाइंड्स अस ऑल टुगेदर, अब इनको बाहर फेंकते हैं. सो द फाइनल पर्पस वाज समथिंग एल्स. तो वो उसका इमेजरी का यूज करना इज नॉट न्यू. As Aditya, you also said, Gandhiji did the same, where he sort of used the idea of Vaishnav Janto, Raghav Rajaram, all of these songs. पर उसका एक पर्पस बहुत अलग था. I think now they've been weaponized to actually mobilize and sort of motivate you to do something very different. It's not uniting against, I mean, it is, in some ways it is uniting against someone else, but it is uniting against people within our country, right? तो वो उन्होंने weaponize उसको कर दिया है. But I mean, the use of music and poetry for political purposes is a very very old phenomena, and also very widespread. ऐसा नहीं कि सिर्फ यहीं हो रहा है ये.
There's also like a very hyper regional. So last year I was in Bombay during Ram Navami. So there's this song that I heard, Divana mein Divana, Shri Ram ka mein Divana. Yeah, and very catchy. This is like very
Very catchy.
catchy tune. Divana mein Divana, Shri Ram ka mein Divana. I
Yeah.
went back and checked. Oh, that comes from Telangana, Andhra, wo region. Apparently
Interesting.
that guy is like a big deal there. So
Oh, right.
so it's like
Interesting.
very hyper regional flavors. It's not
Yeah.
just the north and the central Indian belt which is throwing this
Yeah.
out.
Yeah.
आंध्रा
what
कर्नाटका
I
में भी
was
बहुत है.
saying is what I was saying is कि जो, like what Aditya is saying, right? I think in a weird way you have to give credit to well, I don't know who to give credit to be very honest, but in a weird way you have to realize that actually what Aditya is saying, right, that using Raghupati Raghav or या वैष्णव जंतु तेने के, at that point of time these things bind people. These kind of music is easy to understand, does not require a lot of intellectual investment, is you just get it, you can just passively get it, and now you can use it however you want, and I mean, like, there are so many good, like, communist songs, for example, right? And they are catchy and people sing them and love them. So to
But
yeah.
to that,
Hmm.
despite all that, ठीक है,
Mhm.
you might still find some Hindutva pop songs which even have decent enough tunes, right? Even if they chop out from Pakistani music या even like Korean art forms, like कहीं से भी चुरा लेंगे ये लोग. But despite all that, हिंदी न्यूज चैनल में जो स्टूडियो में गाना गाता है ना, मतलब उनमें ना सुर होता है ना कोई भी आर्टिस्टिक क्वालिटी होता है. तो एटलीस्ट इनको तो यूज कर ले हो.
नहीं, वो इस कुछ कुछ डायरेक्टली यूज नहीं कर सकते ना, बिकॉज फिर वो बहुत ज्यादा वो हो जाएगा, इट विल बिकम टू इन योर फेस, आई थिंक, आई डोंट नो। अगेन मैं कुछ बोलता हूँ, फिर अगले एक हफ्ते
आई
में,
डोंट थिंक न्यूज चैनल्स
हाँ,
को अब
केयर, हाँ,
कवर
अगले
करना।
हफ्ते वो हो जाता है।
कल मैंने
हाउ,
वो एक
हाँ,
ये देखा, एक रूबिका इज नाउ चेंज्ड
या नाउ शी इज न्यूज
न्यूज 18,
24 न्यूज 18, सो न्यूज 18,
न्यूज 18 है।
हाँ।
सो कल वो एक डिबेट कर रही थी वेयर द स्टेज हैड फ्लैग्स ऑफ द सेम फ्लैग्स दैट द बीजेपी आरएसएस यूजिंग विद जय श्री राम एंड विद द मंदिर एंड ऑल। तो स्टेज पे वो फ्लैग्स लगे थे एज इफ इट्स एन ऑफिशियल टेम्पल इवेंट, और वो सबको डिबेट करा रही है और वो चिल्ला रही है समाजवादी पार्टी पर कि आपने क्या किया यहाँ एंड स्टफ लाइक दैट। सो आई डोंट थिंक दे, आई थिंक उनको अब ये लगना कि इट्स टू इन योर फेस इज, आई थिंक वी पास्ट दैट a long long
आज
time ago.
मैं एक मूवी का ट्रेलर देखा। मूवी का नाम सुनना चाहोगे? आर्टिकल 370।
हाँ, देखा मैंने कल।
यामी गौतम है उसमें हीरोइन।
आई सॉ पोस्टर, अच्छा ट्रेलर भी
हाँ,
आ गया है।
हाँ, मतलब वो टीजर आता है आजकल, सॉरी टीजर।
टीजर
बट
टीजर
द
गोधरा पे भी
थिंग,
कुछ आ रहा है ना?
मत
हाँ
बोल
हाँ,
यार
दैट इज
ऐसा।
एकता कपूर, द
दैट इज एकता
साबरमती।
कपूर, अच्छा ओ,
एकता कपूर आई थिंक, आई
बिग
मीन
बजट।
डोंट सू मी एकता, बट आई थिंक वो शायद एकता कपूर का है
एकता
बिकॉज
तक
इट
नहीं
सेज
जाएगा, डोंट वरी।
साबरमती। अरे यू नेवर नो मैन।
Actually, on that note, just a random note. So, our last episode we did with Puneet Pania,
हाँ, आई नो आई
he
नो,
the
ही इज
stand-up, हाँ,
अमेजिंग।
हाँ। तो उस पे there are right wingers who listen to the full episode. Was someone said, someone commented that Aditya is not here. I feel unrepresented as a right winger. फिर someone also, and then some people will say like at 32 minute this second I don't agree। मैंने बोला, भाई तू राइट विंगर है, तू 32 मिनट तक क्यों सुन रहा है? क्या देखो 32 मिनट तक जाके, तो ऐसा है। बट हाँ, सॉरी, गोधरा,
हाँ,
गोधरा।
साबरमती, आई थिंक इट्स कॉल्ड साबरमती, द ट्रूथ ऑफ साबरमती और साबरमती कॉन्स्पिरेसी या कुछ तो नाम है
फाइल्स
उसका।
नहीं यूज किया गया, मतलब ये कि
अभी
आजकल
पता नहीं,
इन थिंग है
हाँ
ना,
कुछ तो है,
फाइल्स
फाइल्स
स्टोरी।
स्टोरी।
अरे कुछ नया करना पड़ेगा ना, साबरमती एक्सपोज है, तो वो,
नहीं तो सिनेमा
तो
इज
बट
डेफिनेटली, आई मीन इट्स ऑलरेडी वी आर सीइंग दैट इट
हाँ,
इज द नेक्स्ट फ्रंटियर।
my point is, sometimes I feel that there is this thing, right? For us, there's a degree of distance, which in a way, like sometimes I was looking at this video that has come up. नागपुर में किसी स्कूल में पूरे बच्चे डांस कर रहे हैं
बच्चे
टीचर के
डांस कर
साथ,
रहे हैं,
right?
या
And I intuitively just connected to an episode from The Office. If you, the Scott Stotts, hey Mr. Scott, I don't know if you've seen that, huh?
ऑफ कोर्स, या
हाँ, तो but like then I think about people like you who are not just there but who are actually working in the area of तो पहली चीज तो मुझे ये समझना चाहिए कि how much does it get to one, and secondly कि काम मिलना कैसे, like how are you guys still getting things to like still being paid, I guess, essentially.
Yeah, I mean, I think it gets to you for sure.
Mhm.
I honestly believe that I think when a journalist stops caring or when a journalist stops feeling,
Mhm.
it is extremely then very difficult for that journalist to be able to channelize everything that is happening and sensitively sort of portray. तो वो sensitivity होना बहुत जरूरी है. I don't think it interferes with your objectivity at all. पर वो आपको feel करना जरूरी है. वरना आप एक डिटैच पर्सन की तरह यू विल फील लाइक कि क्या है, मतलब ठीक है, आई एम डूइंग माय जॉब।
Mhm.
तो वो तो फील तो होता ही है। बट आई थिंक एज आई सेड, आई थिंक द आइडिया इज टू इंक्रीजिंगली sort of bring out stories which try and accurately chronicle what we're living through, and some of the aspects that you don't get to see, right? I mean, जैसे कल मैंने वो जो अल जजीरा वाली स्टोरी, उसमें आई मीन फॉर दैट आई आल्सो स्पोक टू अ लॉट ऑफ मुस्लिम्स एंड पीपल एंड आई कोटेड सम ऑफ देम। तो मतलब एक यहाँ जश्न का माहौल चल रहा है,
Mhm.
एंड विद इन मुस्लिम्स, और एटलीस्ट द
हॉलीडे है
पीपल
भाई, बॉम्बे में फुल डे
हॉलीडे,
हॉलीडे, राइट? पब्लिक
पूरा पूरा
हॉलीडेज,
दिन,
इमेजिन।
पूरा दिन हॉलीडे, पूरा दिन हॉलीडे, दिल्ली में भी नहीं है। तो उसमें विद इन सम मुस्लिम्स दैट आई स्पोक टू, देयर सेइंग कि हमारे वी आर एक्सचेंजिंग मैसेजेस, 22nd को घर से नहीं निकलते, या फिर आप डोंट शो दैट यू आर अ मुस्लिम, तो आपकी मुस्लिम आइडेंटिटी थोड़ी सी सबड्यू करके चलो। सो नीलांजन मुखोपाध्याय, famous author, editor,
हम्म।
journalist, he told me he's written a beautiful piece on this in the Wire, and he's actually compared this moment to 15th August 1947, right? कि that was the day of independence, we remember it as the day of independence, और वहाँ जश्न का माहौल था, but actually a large part of the country was in mourning, right? A large part of the country was feeling absolute despair, loss, were grieving. तो ये जो stark contrast उस टाइम पे था, is what is also seen in some measure today.
But
You
एक
know,
major point of difference is that here the celebration is also partly about the fact that the others are grieving.
100%,
Uh,
100%. Whereas at that point, I think it was more the national project which needed to, celebrate that moment,
Yeah.
and then put the differences behind it, at least for that moment, so that there could be a symbolic unity that you achieve on that day. लेकिन यहाँ तो मतलब वो पूरा एकदम opposite है. Here, it is symbolic that Hindus unite. It's not symbolic that the country unites. That is not. I mean, in fact, the BJP is going around. One of their minority cell members has given a statement, and there's a story about how they're going to 1,200 mosques in the country, और वहाँ दिए जला रहे हैं वो लोग. Right? So one of the Muslims I spoke to said कि ये क्या है? मतलब, it's fine that you celebrate, but then why this needling? It almost feels like you're needling them, ना कि देखो हम कर रहे हैं, आप क्या कर रहे हो? What can you even do?
I remember as a kid, because I'm adjacent to all this in terms of the family that I come from, right? So I remember that when so RSS does these on Vijayadashmi, they do the Path Sanchalan, the march, and they will make sure that they go through that area, which is usually that Muslim area in a city. They will make sure, and the police, even this is like I'm talking about Congress rule, like Digvijay Singh was the chief minister. Even then, uh, the police will like reach out, ki boss, don't do it, don't go from that place, and they will be saying that this is a free country, why should we not? And on on paper, you can, anyone will say yeah, that's true, but you know why they want to do it. So it's this is, see, the whole thing is कि आज मैंने again एक tweet देखा किस कोई Twitter account which put a picture of that temple and like इसके सामने 100 ताजमहल फेल है. Essentially, this is what it is all about.
Yeah,
It's the
absolutely.
this deep insecurity that has created this movement, that fuels this movement, and that will keep fueling this movement. But उन सब के ऊपर अब it is such a farce. It's like अगर ना हम सच में, अगर आज मैं इंडियन नहीं होता और like कोई और होता जिसको बस इंटरेस्ट होता, I would have, like, I don't know if you guys have seen, if you guys go to my Twitter, well, it's one of the top 2-3 tweets, the recent tweets that I've tweeted out. That man is on a temple run and he's in Tamil Nadu and he's coming out of a temple, walking out of a temple, and he's taking like एक step ऐसे लेके pause कर रहा है because he knows that the cameraman has to capture him. And in a video, it looks like so comical. And
यार
I
even
just
more absurd was वो एक किसी एक मंदिर के बाहर वो पोछा लगाने का एक्टिंग कर रहा
the man is
क्या
holding the
so
poster like
नासिक
this,
में
like this,
नासिक में
ऐसे करके पकड़े हुए हैं.
ऐसे so anyone who has ever done any kind of cleaning at home would know that इस आदमी ने कभी किया नहीं है. तो
वो जितेंद्र सिंह वाला देखा कि नहीं? डिड यू गाइस सी हिज?
हाँ, वो भी देखा मैंने. ओह माय गॉड. एक और मैंने देखा जिसमें एक कोई लोकल
वी शुड
बीजेपी,
थैंक मोदी जी यार, ये सब विजुअल्स नहीं आते ना, मतलब वी वुडंट नो.
but the thing is कि I hope someday when we are in a better place, if like even like think of even that Lakshadweep trip, think about like भाई तू गया छुट्टी पे, ठीक है, what is the need to sit like this and have a photo ये बोलने की मैं सोच रहा हूँ कि आप लोगों के लिए कैसे काम करूँ? क्या जरूरत है यार, मत करो ये सब.
या इट्स क्रिंज इफ यू सी द ह्यूमर इन इट. मतलब वो नेजी का गाना है ना, ट्रेजिक कॉमेडी है, ये वही है. मतलब
वैसा ही है वो. मतलब मैं तो बोलता हूँ कि
वो अंकल भी हैं 15 साल के, मतलब से टीनेज टिकटॉक सेंसेशन भी हैं, इंस्टाग्रामर भी, सब हैं मोदी जी. मतलब इतने सारे अवतार एक आदमी में.
बहुत सारे.
वो देश के एचआर भी हैं. वो हर मंदिर को भी गया ना कि मंदिर साफ होना चाहिए आज के दिन, ऐसा वैसा. लाइक ही नो, सी दिस इज वेयर एवरीवन एल्स फॉल्टेड. लाइक देयर वाज गवर्नमेंट प्रोपेगेंडा इवन बिफोर, मेरे सुर मेरा तुम्हारा वाज प्रोपेगेंडा. We like it, but it was propaganda. But now, one of the greatest like psychological trick to make people like you is to have them do something small for you, something that they can do. And but if once they do it, they feel because like internally they feel that मैंने ये किया है, मतलब I must like this person. That's why I'm doing this, right? So
Yeah.
always like ऐसा है ना, always ask for like a small favor. And I feel that I don't know if he knows this, but he's such a master at it. Like literally, like अभी सोचो, अब मैं तुम लोग को एक चीज बोलूँ, जो चीज मेरे को इतना ज्यादा लग रहा है ना, I'll tell you, like that man first said कि आप लोग को अयोध्या आने की जरूरत नहीं 22nd को, stay at home, enjoy it from home. And now what he's doing is he's asking all these big film stars famous cricketers and like famous people essentially to sit beside him as he does. So his priorities are clear. But
100%.
me as an average BJP supporter, Hindutva, why do I not see that this is what he wants? Like he doesn't give a shit. He just only wants like basically अभी क्या बोलते हैं ना HR है और Instagram से सर ये वही हमारे और ही भी हैं देश के और ही हैं वो ठीक उनको बैठना भी है इनके साथ पब्लिक को क्यों
If I was a devout Hindu, or if I
हम्म
was within the BJP or the
yeah
BHP or the Bajrang Dal, I'd be like, man, मैंने काम किया मंदिर के लिए. I have been the one who's gone around, who's mobilized people, who's got everyone saying कि मंदिर बनना है ये वो. और जब मंदिर बन रहा है तब सचिन तेंदुलकर आके बैठा है. What has he done, right? So I would actually be very aghast and outraged if I was devout and if I wanted to be a part of that ecosystem.
I mean I think about people like my father who is very much into all this.
Not Sunil.
I wish
That's
I
right.
wish but the one in reality who's not too much who is very much into this and who's like very involved and everything and who was there in the early 90s doing all this now he's not as important but when this man can rationalize the idea that Advani will not be there or that somehow Advani or Murli Manohar Ji not being there is fine, I think it just boils down to the fact that you never really cared about the faith. You only cared about like bullying the Muslim. Ultimately, like the more I think about it, the like this is not even like अरे temple की जगह ये एक बहुत बड़ा stadium होता है. It's all the same. It's essentially one person whose vanity wants him to sit next to people who are accomplished, so that he feels that he also as accomplished. And then there are these millions and millions of people who just are feeling that whatever they prioritize as their identity is being validated. The writing a book is much like very, very, very tough. I've thought of this and I've realized this and I empathize a lot with you. But if you ever start thinking about like a second subject, I do think explore a bit about this deep sense of insecurity that an average Hindu feels or has been made to feel that makes them choose some of these things. Because ultimately, I don't know, like there's no political cure to this. Tomorrow there could be some like इधर से alliance करके उधर से वो करके the other side could form the government, but I'll be even more scared then actually. Because then the toxicity in the society will have even more like free shoot.
But that I was just saying this to someone yesterday that the absurdity and the irony of the situation is कि अगर आप 10 साल पहले जाते या 15 साल पहले आप यूपीए के टाइम पे जाते, I don't think you'd find as many Hindus believing that वो खतरे में हैं as they are today when you have a Hindu nationalist prime minister, when you have the BJP at its peak majority, at its brute majority. तो मतलब आप पावर में आने के बाद if more Hindus are feeling like अरे हम खतरे में हैं, isn't that absurd? I mean, what has political power then achieved for you?
And
कि जो
even more
लोग
absurd,
नहीं जो इतने साल से आपको मोबिलाइज कर रहे थे कि हम खतरे में हैं. Now you're in power, right? So now what are you doing to sort of alleviate those fears and say कि नहीं अब आप खतरे में नहीं हो. Now we're here. पर आप आके भी वही कर रहे हो. So you're in power and you're still doing it. I mean, it blows my mind that people are not able to see through this level of absurdity.
और क्या इनके सारे ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स क्या फिर कम्युनिस्ट थे क्या? मतलब जिन्होंने जनसंघ और इन सबको हिंदू महासभा वगैरह को मतलब ज्यादा वोट नहीं किया, तो वो सब क्या थे? मतलब चे गुवेरा थे, मतलब थे क्या? ये भी मैं रैशनलाइज नहीं कर पाता हूँ. यू कीप सेइंग 70 साल से कुछ नहीं हुआ, तो 70 साल तक फिर देन यूर अल्ट्रा हिंदू ग्रैंड पेरेंट्स हु सपोजिटली वेर मोर कंजर्वेटिव देन यू, ऐसे सोचा जाए तो मतलब
जी
so they weren't worth their salt. हाँ, and their Hinduness wasn't worth their salt. मतलब तो
absolutely.
यहाँ पे कुछ भी मतलब none of this ever makes sense if you pose the next question, right? So which is why like everything gets personal.
This question
at
that you
point.
just said, are you like seriously asking this question or are you rhetorically asking this question? आदित्य से पूछ रहा हूँ मैं.
नहीं मैं rhetorically बोल रहा हूँ, मतलब कि
हाँ वही
तो नहीं है.
नहीं क्योंकि go on. Sorry.
So how do they rationalize this? वो मैं बोल रहा हूँ कि why did their grandparents stay away from this? उनको खतरा
नहीं, वो
कम
तो
था।
इनोसेंट थे ना रे, वो इनोसेंट थे,
उनको पता ही नहीं
उनको
था क्या हो रहा है।
वो they were religious but they stood for the like Ganga Jamni Tehzeeb which in their minds where only one side was offering everything and the other side was only taking.
जी
So that's how they rationalize it. They very easily rationalize it. उसमें तो कोई प्रॉब्लम ही नहीं है।
नहीं
मैं
बट
बोल बोल नहीं
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 बोल
गो
बोल
गो नहीं, सो आई वांटेड टू गो बैक टू दिस
हम्म
पॉइंट ऑफ मोबिलाइजेशन ना जो
हम्म
कहा। जस्ट आई जस्ट रिमेंबर्ड आई वाज इन यवतमाल
हम्म
लास्ट वीक विदर्भ में, एंड आई वाज टॉकिंग टू द वीएचपी गाइज, आई वाज
हम्म
टॉकिंग टू सम ऑफ देम कार्यकर्ता, तो वहां पे, एंड दिस इज अगेन नॉट सीन
हम्म
इन प्लेसेस लाइक सिटीज लाइक बॉम्बे दिल्ली वगैरह, हमारे मीडिया में रिपोर्टिंग इतनी नहीं होती। So they were doing this at the grassroots, where in a place like Yavatmal, which is not significant politically, I mean, it's one Lok Sabha seat, ठीक है नहीं है वैसा है। वहाँ पे भी वहाँ की वीएचपी ने एक ऑर्गेनाइज किया था, where they were basically sending those छोटा मिनी ट्रक्स टू विलेजेस, राम की और श्री राम मंदिर की पूरे फोटो वोटो लगा के, पोस्टर लगा के, एंड दे वर कलेक्टिंग फूड ग्रेन्स फ्रॉम फार्मर्स, सेइंग कि आपका ये जो अनाज है, द फूड ग्रेन्स दैट यू growing will go to Ayodhya, और अयोध्या में जो actually you can all be a part of the festivities. And I mean, I think a month into that whole program, I met them last month, and they were doing this since December. उन्होंने 3 ट्रक भर के अनाज भेजा है, और चौथी ट्रक, मतलब, और वो कंटेनर ट्रक, छोटी ट्रक नहीं, कंटेनर ट्रक भर के अनाज भेजा है यवतमाल से। चौथी ट्रक ऑलरेडी फिल हो रही थी और उस दिन जाने वाली थी अयोध्या। The tragedy in this is Ayodhya,
तो
sorry, Yavatmal is a place where 5,000 farmers have killed themselves because of agrarian distress. वहां के फार्मर को जाके आप रिलीफ नहीं दे रहे हो, यू आर सेइंग कि एक्चुअली देयर इज अ हायर कॉज that you need to be a part of, तो आप अनाज दे दो and you can be a part of that higher cause, right? And farmers are also responding.
And
I mean,
यही
this,
master stroke है, right? So
yeah,
this
absolutely.
this is essentially the genius of this idea, like the perverted genius of this idea. You do not have, and it's also in many ways Hinduism ka the evil master stroke. This is कि in this life there is nothing tangible, material that you can aspire towards, but there is always this higher cause that you are part of. So that way you rationalize the poor quality of life, the subjugation that people have to go
Yeah,
through, all of it.
yeah.
मैंने एक ट्वीट भेजा है, ठीक है, जस्ट चेक करो उस ट्वीट को तुम लोग। क्या मुझे ये बताओ कि हाउ आर पीपल नॉट सिटिंग एट एंड लाफिंग? हाउ इज दिस कंट्री सीरियस? हमने अपने हमारे देश में डंडर मिफ्रिन क्यों नहीं रखा अभी तक?
अच्छा, he's also doing yoga there, अरे वाह।
ही इज डूइंग दिस अनुलोम विलोम
अनुलोम विलोम कर रहे हैं यार, क्या
अकेले बैठ
प्राणायाम।
के। वो अनुलोम विलोम ही है ना वो, because that's the maximum physical activity he can do. I promise you that. But how is this not a fast, यार?
और सब में उनके वो चेहरे का जो भाव, जो which is the mix of anger, constipation, like go get it attitude, सब कुछ दिखाना है ना वो आंखों के साथ में, मतलब
वो लक्ष्य वाला
लक्ष्य वाला
डिटर्मिनेशन,
डिटर्मिनेशन जो
ऋतिक रोशन की आंखों में जो होता है, he
जो
points
होता
to
है, which is like always like
हमने
that's
but
हमने
I
हमेशा
mean,
हाँ
नहीं, but I want
बोलो।
to, if there is a follower who looks at Modi ji, you remember in the cave वाली फोटो याद है ना?
हम्म
I'd be like, but if you are meditating and if you're going to be staying there, why is there a camera person there? आपको करना है ना, आप करो, मतलब you truly be that person and say, यार मैं अब 2 दिन के लिए मैं सब रिनंसिएट कर रहा हूँ, I'm going to be in a cave, मुझे कोई डिस्टर्ब मत करो। पर आप
and the
केव में
most
भी जाके आंखें बंद करके चश्मा लगा के फिर फोटो क्लिक कराते
Have you
हो।
ever asked this question to like a serious follower, by the way?
No, but I think
On these
some
lines?
some of them say कि हाँ थोड़ा सा है उनको, मतलब he loves being in the limelight, पर ठीक है। So their rationalization again is कि ठीक है, that's a very minor detail.
so their rationalization also is that he's the OG Hindu influencer, so he's making Hinduism cool again, तो उसके लिए ये सब करना पड़ता है।
हाँ।
So ये दो चीजें, एक चीज तो ये कि this face expression that you guys are talking about, we've talked about this before. This is only to fellow Indians. You'll only see this kind of this expression.
The face muscles lose all control when कोई गोरा आ जाता है
The moment there is like a white person, only like a white person, it all changes so bloody fast. Like he becomes like one of those, like मैंने ऐसे बहुत देखे हैं जो मिड लेवल मैनेजर जो होते हैं ना आईटी फर्म्स में, जो पहली बार आते हैं ऑन साइट, ठीक है, कि आई सी योर
वो
ट्विट अम्ब्रेला वैसा वाला, ठीक है। मेगन कैली भी कुछ समझ में नहीं आया क्या बोल रहा है बंदा, बट
वो भी था ना, वो हाउस स्पीकर के साथ कहा था ना।
oh exactly Kevin McCarthy. So this
So
is
the subtler way of say him going to a cave and doing propaganda की meditation क्या would be कि there is this PMO office staff who leaks out कि 2-4 हफ्ते बाद बता दिया, मतलब प्रोपेगेंडा चल भी रहा है और सटल भी है, मतलब वैसे।
पर वो नहीं ना,
मेरा
आज नहीं,
वो नहीं
दैट इज,
नहीं
हाँ,
चलेगा।
दैट्स नॉट द स्टाइल। मतलब अभी उस दिन मैंने कल एचटी में वो एक आर्टिकल पढ़ा, यू नो ही इज फास्टिंग एंड थिंग्स ना, वो
हाँ
कुछ कर रहे हैं। तो उसमें ऐसा लिखा था कि यू नो ही इज स्लीपिंग ऑन द फ्लोर, सिर्फ नारियल पानी पी रहे हैं वो। सोर्सेज सेड ऑल दिस, मतलब ये पेज 1 पे आर्टिकल है, सोर्सेज सेड ये कर रहे हैं। when when quizzed about this to a PMO official, he just said it is true but refused to go into detail कि हाँ भाई, मतलब यू नो हम कुछ नहीं बताएंगे आपको, इट इज ट्रू, ठीक है, बट बाकी आप कर लो। तो मतलब ये क्या है यार, लाइक यू नो यू ऑल्सो वांट टू लीक आउट ऑल ऑफ दिस कि वो जमीन पर सो रहे हैं, वो नारियल पानी में, कौन बोल रहा है, हु इज सेइंग ऑल दिस? आई मीन विद दैट काइंड ऑफ सिक्योरिटी, हु इज गोइंग इन एंड सीइंग दैट बेचारे मोदी जी सिर्फ नारियल पानी पी रहा है? इट इज ऑब्वियसली हिज स्टाफ, right? And then you come and say, but हम नहीं बोल रहे, you know, we don't want to say any of this.
and you want to pretend that this is not happening outside, like this is not happening with his explicit approval. Like मुझे ये बताओ, ये जो वीडियो अपन ने अभी देखा जिसमें he is sitting next to an ocean on a I don't know what kind of stool and doing anulom vilom. Imagine this happening. So this guy is doing this and there is a cameraman recording it. मतलब, and think of yourself as the third individual, like someone in a security detail looking. How can you not laugh at all this? Like this is like यार आदमी
And
प्री-वेडिंग शूट देख के हंसता है, right?
and how can you not go home and tell others कि यार ये इतना absurdity देखा मैंने आज, ये आदमी है इस तरह का, थोड़ा प्रॉब्लम है, मतलब ये बोलने वाला भी कोई नहीं है क्या? मतलब वर्ड ऑफ माउथ स्प्रेड भी
मुझे
नहीं
नहीं
होता
समझ
है क्या
और
इस
ना
चीज
ये
पे?
चीजें, the thing is कि people are also so like the your coconut water thing, right? This is meant for a WhatsApp. This is
Yeah.
basically meant for WhatsApp. Like at some point, I don't even
इसका
believe that
एक
he's
वर्जन
doing it.
पहले भी आया था कि when he's flying he only has मूंग दाल, वो फ्राइड मूंग दाल होता है ना,
Which
there
is
is a
not healthy,
snack
bro.
which is not
Which
very
is not
healthy,
fair.
especially if you're flying, also for others.
डिहाइड्रेशन भी हो जाता है,
Dehydration
एग्जैक्टली।
भी
सोचो थोड़ा,
तो,
उससे अच्छा तो दारू पी लो, मतलब अगर करना ही है तो कम से कम खुश तो
तो
रहो।
वही खाते हैं
हाँ
प्लेन में,
But
मतलब
I think
ऐसे
मैं
भी।
थोड़ा एक्स्ट्रापोलेट करूंगा कि I
हाँ,
think everything that's happening in this country is meant for a WhatsApp.
that's true.
Essentially अगर आप देखो, all the
and
optics are all meant for a WhatsApp message. अगर वो WhatsApp पे fit नहीं हो रहा है तो मतलब नहीं बनता।
and isn't that true for, like, even if you detach politics from all this, isn't that true for say everything that happens when there is a wedding at home, or say even a religious ritual at home? Everything is just for optics, right? So the way
Yeah.
people like, मतलब we'll show कि हम 500 priest को बुला के शादी करेंगे, मतलब whatever it is, मतलब in whoever does it in whatever capacity is just to show people कितना इसमें से religiosity is
But
just for
Aditi, I don't know if it was
self-fulfillment.
always this way. I don't know if we were always a nation of, you know, people who wanted to do events at a personal level also. मतलब कि हर चीज event बनना, was it always the case? I mean, you know,
I
ठीक है,
mean, think of
small.
our weddings, yeah. Don't you feel like there is some element that is slightly so I'll tell you. So we have a theory in the BJPod world that after liberalization in the 90s, a bunch of Badjatya and Aditya Chopra, Yash Chopra movies actually created the pathway for the 2014 event and subsequently. Because at least I don't know, even in North India, some things that became popular after हम आपके यहाँ कौन, like जूता चुराना, maybe in some corners, ठीक है, करवा
Yeah.
चौथ was a primarily North Indian Punjabi Khatri thing. So there are so many of such things. Like Sangeet used to be like an all women affair, and I remember even as a kid that men and boys were not allowed in there. It was only women who were doing that. That's what I remember from like there, right? Now it's all like there's a stage that, like, think about this, like we are those people, and I think one of the reasons that we are like that is because we are also constantly consumed across castes, across economic levels about status.
Yeah.
Uh, so basically, we want to project, and I think if you dig deep enough, you'll find the reason is caste system itself. But we want to project a bigger status of ourselves than we actually have, simply because in some convoluted way we think that's how we will be accepted more, in the broader society. We did an episode with Anurag minus Verma, so now Share, where we talk
Right.
about how a lot of traditionally oppressed communities uh, have given up, not just now, but from a few generations, given up on eating meat because that's how they feel that they will be more accepted by us.
Yeah.
And at our core, I think that status obsession is also leads. So, for example, G20. What was G20? It was a rotation thing, but the way this man kind of spinned it off, it became an event, and we lapped it up. And I
100%.
think he knows, not just more than he knows, he wants. He also is like, if he could, he would organize a wedding every day. That's his real calling, by the way. I feel he'll be really good at it. He has that eye. He knows what like. He would organize a great wedding for Ambani family because their like blingy sort of richness, couples very well with this guy's idea of what is like what goes. So like laser or wo sab, he'll be really good at it. That's who we are.
But did you guys see that very horrifying video yesterday? The CEO, I think, Hyderabad mein ya kahin, who was trying
Yeah, I
to
saw
run
that.
hell to his death at a
Yeah.
company conclave. I mean,
What's the need of all that?
which is what I'm
What
saying. I mean, I feel like, there are these sort of markers where I feel, of course, it's nothing to do with the politics alone. There is social media, there is all of that. But I think we've increasingly become, that nation which wants to do things so that we can show things off. Now, earlier it used to be कि यार शादी करानी है क्योंकि मोहल्ले में पता चलना चाहिए. अब है कि शादी करानी है so that Instagram पे भी पता चल जाए. So
बहुत
we've just,
बड़ा है.
I think, added another dimension to it.
और पता भी ऐसे चले
always
कि
there.
आज के आज 5 मिलियन लोगों को पता चल जाए.
Hmm.
मतलब वो भी एक पार्ट ऑफ द
अच्छा, वो
प्रॉब्लम.
बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है बाय द वे. सो जो स्टेटस ऑब्सेशन की बात कर रहे हैं ना, या अभी याद है तुम लोग को लास्ट महीने मनोहर खट्टर इन हरियाणा ऑर्गेनाइज्ड अ योगा इवेंट, एंड नाउ इट इज द लार्जेस्ट नंबर ऑफ पीपल डूइंग योगा टुगेदर इन अ प्लेस इन अ डे, गिनीज बुक रिकॉर्ड. ठीक है. There is this strange obsession about these things as well, and I think it's easy because now it's easy to in a world that is becoming slightly more complex, where let's say I cannot immediately know what caste you come from. Huh? How do you identify? Caste was a status identifier, right? How do I identify status? So now we have become obsessed with weird things. IIT rank, movie ne kitte karo, the kind of firm that you work for, the kind. So
वांगा रेड्डी.
easy status markers, like these are easy status markers, and so we have always been obsessed by these things now. कि
Basically
why are we
anything
so marks
tangible ना.
obsessed? हाँ,
नंबर
anything
अगर होगा
tangible,
तो बस हाँ.
exactly. तो वो अपन बहुत obsession है उसका अपन को. और यार मैं तो ये कहूँगा कि there is some amount of outward like projection of like so it's me, so it's just an anecdotal example, but I have attended a couple of funerals in India and one here, and what I realized, and maybe you guys, I don't know if you felt this, but people, obviously if someone passes away, people are sad, but I have seen that, and again, an anecdotal example, not data, but I saw that people much more are sadder, even much more loudly in back home. In fact, the thing that struck me very strange is when my grandmother passed away, my mother and a few of my aunts really were like trying to like shake me into crying. I don't know if that is something that you guys have experienced, but like unless you cry, you are not sad.
And uska
And
there is also the reverse of which is true, right? Where the general perception in India is that white people don't have emotions.
yeah,
Not just white people, non-Indians do not feel emotion. They are transactional. बच्चों के साथ तो उनका कोई होता ही नहीं है relationship.
oh bhai, हाँ.
I remember I was at a funeral where there were some aunties, तो वो हमारा वो आई थिंक वो घर कुछ सेकंड या थर्ड फ्लोर पे था, तो द डेथ हैड हैपेंड मे बी अ डे अगो और सेम डे और समथिंग, आई डोंट रिमेम्बर नाउ, बट बेसिकली ईच टाइम अ न्यू पर्सन केम होम,
Yes.
वो वापस होना शुरू हो गया.
Yes. Yes.
And each time, so they would then be, that person would immediately rush to them, console them, them to calm down. थोड़ा सा फिर बंद हो जाते थे, फिर वापस कोई आया तो वापस रोना. And what you're saying is right. I mean, it almost felt like, my grief has to be validated by you.
Yeah.
कि आपको पता चलना चाहिए मैं बहुत बहुत दुखी हूँ. I'm हार्ट ब्रोकन एंड यू नीड टू कंसोल मी. वरना आपको शायद लग जाएगा कि अरे इसको दुख क्यों नहीं है. So
I
I
think
yeah.
there is a lot of value for, say, what is the accepted standard norm in our country. Na? Matlab, if you deviate, say, way of expression of love, grief, all of this can be very personal and very like individualistic. Like two people may not express grief the same way. But do we as a society have space for that? Matlab, because there is always, like, same as with devotion, right? Two people can be extremely devout but express it very differently. But now there seems to be this thing that everything has to be standardized in this society. So
The
and in this
the
standardization process,
thing
it's the
that
loudest that always wins. Basically, the loudest form is what
the,
always survives. And cinema, there's just one thing: cinema is
I
an
mean,
art
just
form.
what we said.
Uh,
Yeah.
hmm.
Yeah. Sorry, go on.
Yeah.
no
No. So
नहीं क्या
so
बोल
with
रहे
all art forms, right? Cinema, like how we evolve from, say, theater to, say, modern day cinema, acting progressively gets subtler because video as an art form, close-ups are a thing. So you don't really have to project louder emotions because वो last row में बैठा हुआ जो audience है उस तक नहीं पहुंचाना है. And that's how music also gets subtler, right? So when you're performing art in, say, an open crowd, versus, say, in a closed acoustic controlled auditorium, you can have subtler music in that sense, right? So हर चीज का एक purpose भी होता है, but eventually even in our cinema, if you see the loudest eventually wins through, because जो acting, जो 90s का जो acting है, it's not warranted for TV or theater in some sense, क्योंकि it's a personalized form of entertainment ना, तो जरूरी नहीं है कि उतना loud emotions expressions ऐसे over the top हो. But somehow in our society that somehow survives and wins through.
No, I was just saying that it reminded me of what you just said, Aditya, about कि, what if the PMO 3 days later leaks out कि मोदी जी meditate करने गए थे. And I think one of the reasons why that doesn't work is exactly what we said, right? That if it's not out there, if it's not in your face, then it's just not good enough. मतलब, वो दिखना चाहिए आपको. Like Rahul Gandhi going to Kedarnath, unless there is a video, it doesn't really matter. Unless there are photos, unless there are in-your-face images and imagery around what the visit is like, it won't matter. And I think the Congress suffered a lot big.
Oh, bhai, this is where one thing, Manmohan Singh, that man lost his parents during partition, grew up with his grandparents. His grandfather passed away when he was barely very, very young. And then he went on to become gold medalist in Punjab University, went to Oxford, Harvard, everything that you can think of, became one of the world's most renowned economists, RBI governor, and then prime minister. If you ever wanted to make a biopic of one of your prime ministers, think about the story that you have with Manmohan Singh. But no, like the problem is now when you're really that kind of an individual, when you're real, you don't want to put it. Mallikarjun Kharge, his story is so. And abhi recently, you know what I found out? I found out that PV Narasimha Rao could speak 9 languages.
Yeah.
Nobody really, but who we are idealizing right now are this buffoon and that guy in UP.
The simplest fact that तुमको लगता है कि no one had khichdi as a prime minister before as a staple diet, मतलब
no
Lal
one's
Bahadur
fasted
Shastri
before.
or no one's fasted before.
So I think there was so much of myth creation. Na? Matlab, I think they caught on to it very, very early. Even before he became the prime minister, they caught on to the fact that it can't just be another guy who wants power. Matlab, it has to be, almost this sort of this legend of sorts who's now finally coming to the chair that was always waiting for him. तो इतना सारा myth creation हुआ कि ये ऐसा करते हैं, वैसा करते हैं, ये होता है, वो होता है. There's a backstory that was put together very well. I mean, one doesn't know how much of it was real, how much of it was not real. crocodile का बच्चा घर आया था नहीं आया था वो नहीं पता, but you know there is all of the creation of it, all of the putting together of it that was so essential to the Modi story कि वो
for
brand बन गया, वरना
And it
वो
hasn't yet
मनमोहन
been
सिंह का
put
आप
together. The problem is that this is a man who has been in office as a chief minister for about 2 decades and then a decade as a prime minister of the country. And you tell me that ये आदमी को अपने रेसिडेंस में गौशाला चलाने का आइडिया, मतलब इतना डिवोट था ये आइडिया उसके दिमाग में हमेशा था. 75-year-old man today plants a piece of news saying he has cows in his backyard as a prime minister. So don't people find this absurd कि मतलब the myth creation is still on. Matlab, there are like a person who is
तुम लोग ने
in your face every minute. There are still things about him that people do not know. Matlab,
तुम लोग ने वो फोटो देखी है कि नहीं, where he's working on a laptop, is sitting in his garden. There's a half read book and there are two
Swan.
newspapers and then there are swans. And I'm like, यार थोड़ा would आधे तो freeze हो गया था. Anyway, कि राणा अयूब, whenever she visited him, he had Obama's dreams from my father. That book of Obama's, because he wanted to project himself as an Obama-like character. So some of it is definitely like he always had that knack to kind of project himself that way. And he also things fell into place for him, be it the riot that happened. I mean, the precursor, the Sabarmati Express, that kind of happened for him. And then the Nano Singur, that event where West Bengal refused to do Nano, and then Gujarat. Think about it, like that's how then the vibrant Gujarat and everything. But that event kind of started with the Gujarat model, that in Gujarat the business is welcome and blah. And look at where Nano is now. Anyway.
Yeah. No, but even with Nano, I remember there's a very, very powerful way of making that statement. If you guys remember, he said, I have got this factory at the cost of 1 rupee. So people said 1 rupee कैसे? He said मैंने 1 रुपए का SMS भेजा रतन टाटा को कि आप यहाँ आ जाइए, and he agreed. 1 रुपए में गुजरात को इतनी बड़ी फैक्ट्री मिल गई. Right? So it's a great story to tell. It's a fabulous story to tell.
And he is good at that. He's good. Like I can see him at my पुराने जबलपुर के घर के पास वाले पान टपरा में sitting, and there are 5 men and he's telling, और फिर हम मिले ओबामा से, उनको ऐसी पटकनी दी हमने हैं. वो एक अंकल थे दिल्ली मेट्रो वाले. I don't know if you've seen that video. यार मोदी तो पटक ही देगा ओबामा को. But for more on Modi's life, do listen to the Modi biopic episode that we did. It's fantastic. Acha, the one last thing that I also kind of quickly wanted to touch upon, and I can only ask you because you are living there right now. Have you felt some force to participate? Like, have you been asked donations? Have the Resident Welfare Association asked you something? Because I'm hearing a friend of mine told me that he paid some chanda because if he would not, he thought he'd be singled out. Similarly, he had to do tali thali, candlelight and all that, because there is a fear that you'll be singled out if you don't do that. So
no, so I have escaped that, thankfully, because I mean, partly because I'm a journalist, and partly because I think the place in Mumbai that I stay in might be difficult to access for a lot of people. तो वो मैं बच गया हूँ. But I've heard of cases where they've been going to societies. कल ही मुझे बता रहा था, मुंबई में they are going to societies and they're asking housing societies to put up the flags, those saffron flags, कि आप दिखाइए कि आप celebrate कर रहे हैं. And I mean the flip side to this is that if you don't put them up, you are singled out as the people who didn't. Right?
Yeah.
So it becomes a bit of a marker as well. फिर आपको जाके वो घर में they are giving rice, saying कि आपको you have to do a puja on that day, you have to do this and that. So there are all of these activities that are happening across the city. I mean,
the thing about religion, right, is that it's a conversation stopper. Ultimately, like the moment you shout Ram or religion, you can basically stop any criticism could just be turned into कि they don't like. मैं ये सोच रहा था कि like first of all, like are there irreligious agnostic atheist people in India, and how they are dealing with all this, or does just keeping quiet become part of your daily life? You just keep quiet and just live through it.
I mean, I think I like the thing that I wrote about, right? Your Discord bit where you're
Yeah.
talking to Muslims about everyday communalism, I think it's precisely that for so many people who don't identify with the dispensation, where you just silence yourself. You say that I need those safe spaces where I can talk about this, but then beyond those spaces, I will not engage in any of these conversations. Which is why you see that, on say WhatsApp groups and stuff, there are people who never say a word, not here nor there. But that doesn't necessarily mean they don't have an opinion. They're just not comfortable voicing out dissent, especially, or protest. जैसे हमारे सोसाइटी ग्रुप में देर वाज
Hmm.
समवन सेड कि एक 20 सेकंड को पार्ट करेंगे कम्युनिटी हॉल में वगैरह वगैरह, एंड जस्ट 3 people out of whatever 100 200 or people sort of said a thumbs up to it. किसी ने और रिस्पॉन्ड नहीं किया. Now, that shouldn't mean that the remaining 197 people have agreed to it. There will be a lot of people who say ये क्या है, and I know for a matter of fact people don't agree to this. तो ये है कि वो साइलेंस कर लेते हैं अपने आप को, मतलब इसमें क्यों पढ़ना, इसमें क्यों बात करनी.
In
See, क्या हुआ ना,
Mhm.
इंस्टीट्यूशनली आपको वो स्पेस नहीं दिया गया है. If your media was vibrant enough, like in the US, when you saw, even with Trump, you saw that the media stepped up. You saw
Yeah.
that the media sort of took to the challenge and said, okay, we'll report, we'll go out, we'll work harder. Right? If people think we've let them down, we'll work harder, we'll go to areas where Trump is popular, we'll try and see what the problems are. वो सारा करेंगे, investigate करेंगे हम. So the space for people who opposed the regime had been created. Institutionally, the courts were working, all of
The
that was there.
structural strength
Yeah.
of US is actually something that, unfortunately, in the last 10 years, in India, it has only eroded. Like, I cannot,
Absolutely.
outside of that Rahul Gandhi verdict, I cannot think of any verdict where the Supreme Court has gone against the desires of this government. Comparing US is a bit unfair, I feel, because even at its, like, even when Trump won in 2016, if you are a media person, you can still see that more than 50% of the country does not want him, or more than 50% of the voters do not want him. So you know that now,
पर
now
यहाँ
I
क्या
know
है?
you will say, हाँ,
Yeah. यहाँ
नहीं
तो
नहीं,
उससे भी
हाँ,
ज्यादा था. So,
exactly.
yeah.
No, go on.
No, so I'm saying that, I mean, sorry, you finish, I'll tell you.
So
It's a very limited point
हाँ,
about the numbers, but yeah.
no, I know that. See, a part of me. So I'll tell you, we are looking at when we are talking about English language and Hindi language media, right? We're not talking about other languages. Now, Niranjan Sarkar and there's a guy from UC Berkeley. These two have done some phenomenal work in like the voter kind of distribution. And the thing that they found is that there are 191 Lok Sabha seats where BJP and Congress compete. Like they are the competition. And in both 2014 and 2019, BJP's hit rate in those Lok Sabha seats was close to 85%.
Yeah.
So, like I can tell you, as I grew up in MP, but I'm a Bengali, right? So I can tell you that there are news channels in Bengali news channels. So, for example, ABP, जो भी उसी में थी ना पहले.
हाँ, ABP
हाँ,
में थी.
तो ABP Hindi and ABP Bangla are like two totally different news channels. ABP Bangla treats Mamta Didi with such exact same reverence that ABP Hindi treats Modi ji with. So what I'm trying to say is that when I was saying what I just said, I also meant the media that maybe you and I consume, the media from India that maybe you and I consume. If you, what do I say to you, man? If you like pick up any Hindi newspaper, it's basically like propaganda at this point.
Absolutely.
And most English channels are also like that. So what I'm trying to say is that in that space, there is just no space.
Yeah.
And the problem is that India is very Delhi centric. So India is very Hindi and small percentage English centric. And when we look at how media is functioning, or the media that is actually powerful it's that media, which is not really like. And in that case, I feel that यार भोपाल में last Lok Sabha election में Pragya Thakur and Digvijay Singh competed. Pragya got 63% votes in a city where there are 69% Hindus. So like then that's kind of where I lose faith in everything. This is the kind. So in that context, now you tell me what do you think?
No, so I mean, my larger point was this, that see, one of the reasons why we're also seeing, people feeling like it's okay to be hateful towards Muslims, towards others, is because it has become a very normalized thing. It's been normalized over time, over the last 10 years or so, कि आप ये बोल सकते हो, right? There is strength in numbers. I mean, a lot of them were always people who had the same communal mindedness that they show now. और वो तब बोल नहीं पाते थे because that space wasn't there, right? In the same way, and I meet a lot of people, especially for my book. I met so many people who are core Hindutva supporters, and they said that अब हमें इतने सालों के बाद चांस मिला है बोलने का, राइट? द लिबरल ऑर्डर फेल्ड अस बिकॉज लिबरल्स ने हमें बात ही करने का मौका नहीं दिया. दे जस्ट केप्ट शनिंग अस अवे एज बीइंग कम्युनल, कि आप बात नहीं कर सकते, आप चले जाइए यहाँ से. सो my larger point is that there was that space that was not existing for the right wing back then, and as a result of which people said कि यार if we feel a certain way towards Muslims, let's keep it to ourselves, क्योंकि वो space नहीं है. आज वो exact opposite हो गया है, where people who feel contrary to what the regime wants feel that वो space नहीं है बात करने का. So it's better to be in our little safe spaces and talk about it, because आपको कहीं space नहीं मिलेगा. If you want to voice your dissent, you need you need dissent to be normalized also, ना. You need to feel like अच्छा सब बोल रहे हैं, मैं बोल सकता हूँ. कि सब राहुल गांधी पे जोक कर रहे हैं, मैं कर सकता हूँ. सब मनमोहन सिंह पे जो कर रहे हैं, मैं कर सकता हूँ. It was okay to do that, because you could see that the media was doing it. Amitabh Bachchan would crack these jokes. Everyone was doing that. And then suddenly now you're seeing that everyone is only speaking one tone. सारे सब कुछ बंद कर दिए हैं. No one is cracking jokes about the prime minister anymore. No one's cracking jokes about anyone in the ruling party. तो आपको पता चल गया कि वो स्पेस खत्म हो गई है अब, which is why you're then not able to talk. So my larger point is that there are always people who will be against what is happening, but I don't think they find that space. The media is obviously, and I'm a part of it, and we failed to create that space, but so have other structures and spaces.
Well, the big thing about like living under capitalism is that media will be owned by people, or media groups will be owned by certain people who have money, and at this point you see that every outlet is basically owned by some person who has a very similar kind of desire to kind of project certain things. So I don't know if when you say media has failed, like thoda sa, I just feel that it was bound to, with the kind of system we have, because the kind of capital we have. So for example, if like using US as an example, MSNBC is a very liberal news outlet, and then Fox is a very conservative news outlet. Now, MSNBC's ownership structure makes it possible to be a liberal news outlet because there is a man, or there are men who feel that way and who fund such groups, similar with Fox. This is completely missing in India. Like, there are literally, like, there is no one with that kind of money and power to fund the kind of things that that could be funded. And that's a very that discussion would require us to sit here for another hour, because
I mean, I have a major, and I hope that people who also listen to you, I hope that they end up doing this. I have a major problem because, see, the media is struggling, right? We've seen that all of these institutional structures of the media, mainstream media, to collapse ho gaye. But there is independent media. There are people who are trying to go out, who are trying to do this, who are trying to wage this war every single day when they go out to report. और हमें प्रॉब्लम ऐसा हो रहा है कि हमारे पास पैसे नहीं है to be able to go out and actually try and bring you the kind of reporting that you deserve, right? My problem is that I don't think there are enough people who are even willing to go out there and support that kind of media structure, which is independent, which is still trying to make a difference. I mean, I can name all of these outlets. I can name, you spoke of News Laundry, there is Scroll, there is Article 14, there is there is Caravan, there is The Wire, there's so many of them, right? And some of them may be more biased in some ways than others, but there are still a lot of media outlets who who will not give you opinion, who will want to give you stories. I write for Article 14 a lot, and it's always about doing ground stories. It's always about going down to the ground and reporting on things. But the struggle is that we don't find that there are enough resources that allow us to do that. तो जब हम रिपोर्टर्स को या फिर जब हम मीडिया, इंडिपेंडेंट मीडिया को पैसे नहीं मिलेंगे for us to travel to be able to bring you stories, you're not going to be able to get that kind of space. तो ये blame करना एक बात है, but then I also hope that
हाँ
people, take this as the impetus they need to go out and fund any one media organization. जितना आपका privilege है उतना तो करिए आप.
मैं
बाहर
बिल्कुल भी
बैठे हो.
ब्लेम नहीं कर रहा इन
Yeah.
नॉट मैं इनफैक्ट मैं तो होपलेस हो रहा हूँ बिकॉज सो फॉर एग्जांपल न्यूज़ लॉन्ड्री if you listen to a news laundry podcast hafta or charcha, and if you listen to some of the letters they get, it really scares me because it seems like that even the subscriber funded model wants people to like even now the letters ask them to be more balanced, and I'm like, which is like, what world is this? And I just feel that population that really wants something, that really kind of thinks about like a syncretic society and how it will benefit us is actually a much smaller number than we have anticipated. And it was basically like, up until now, for the first few decades after we became independent, I feel it was just that Congress, being the party of freedom, took them, and then there were just too many divisions across caste and state linguistic lines that but now it is all kind of, I mean, in UP, in India, I think BJP is the biggest Dalit party. I mean, in terms of so I think that's where it becomes slightly like I feel a bit hopeless. And I know that someone like Aditya probably also does. Yeah, so that's where kind of it becomes challenging. I know कि ऐसा हर बार ऐसे ही होता है, we talk and then we end up in like कि कुछ नहीं हो सकता.
नहीं यार,
चलो.
I'm hopeful. मतलब
हाँ,
I think one thing that history teaches you is
yeah.
that these phases come and go, but nations survive, civilization survive. तो ये भी जाएगा, ये phase भी जाएगा. But I think more importantly there are lessons that I think different sectors need to take. The media needs to take, the political class needs to take, people need to take. So I hope that people have imbibed some of those lessons at least. And as I said, one of the things that people at least should be doing is supporting independent media as far as they can. अगर आपके पास वो privilege है कि आप यूएस में बैठे हो, यूके में बैठे हो, कहीं पे भी बैठे हो, इंडिया में बैठे हो आप, how much does it take? Couple of thousand rupees, 5,000 rupees, कितना आपको? So I hope that people end up doing something. I think beyond blaming or beyond cribbing about what is happening, I hope that people realize कि ये छोटे छोटे steps है जो कर सकते हैं, जो ले सकते हैं वो. It's not all doom and gloom. I mean, we will reach a better point.
On that happy note, I think we should wrap. I will ask some, like, any recommendation outside of your fabulous book that you have. I will recommend, like, on what you just said, right? So, but recommend नहीं है, कुछ याद आया मुझे. Basically, I was listening to, I think, The Daily, the
Right.
podcast a few years ago, and they did an episode about this New York Times journalist who was an East Europe field reporter. So he would travel from New York to places in the Eastern
Okay.
Europe, and he did a lot of reporting from Romania. And so he was telling that after December 1989, when he went there the next time, which was January, there were no communists in Romania. What I'm trying to say is that things sometimes change, like,
Absolutely.
and a lot of people who are shouting and doing everything will suddenly tell you how they were never with someone and they were always opposed to someone.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, so to our listeners, in December, I hope that's not how it goes. But in December 25th, 89, Ceausescu, who was the dictator of Romania, was shot by his own army. Not, I don't know, not a cool point. But anything, Aditya, you haven't been here like in the last few episodes. कुछ पढ़ रहा है तो आजकल
नहीं,
छोड़ दिया क्या?
छोड़ दिया पढ़ना.
वो कैसे?
I
J-style.
never read a book in my life.
Thank you, Sandeep sir. Thank you for making animal. What about you, Kunal?
Yeah, multiple books. So one thing that I would recommend is
Hmm.
this book called The Hitler Myth. If you guys
Mhm.
haven't read it, please check it out. I think I can't see the author. I've
Hmm.
halfway through it.
Hmm.
It's a fascinating book which basically talks of the myth creation around Hitler. उसकी शुरुआत से, even before he came to power, and then in his early years and things as well, कि वो कैसे वो सारा mechanics हुआ, and then you'll find striking examples and striking similarities between what is happening. So I would recommend that for sure. But otherwise, I'm just reading a lot of books to escape a lot of the the grim
Reality.
stuff that surrounds us. So Frederick Bachman is my current favorite. I don't know if you guys have read any of his work, but yeah, these two.
Actually, Rest is History, the podcast. If you guys listen, I mean, I know Aditya does. They have done like a 7-8 episode series on like Hitler and his rise, and even that is like, oh bhai, that is so eerily, yeah. But with that, I hope January 22nd does not become January 26th, in future. I hope we find a way to keep these two separate. That's the hope. With that, thanks, man. Thank you so much. It was
Thank you so much,
fun.
guys. It was
I seriously hope it was engaging for you.
No, absolutely was. I mean, I love the way it just takes its own, course and its directions. मजा आया, सच में बहुत मजा आया.
I will wrap.
Long years ago, we made a trip with destiny, and now the time comes when we shall redeem our pledge.
8 नवंबर 2016 की रात्रि को 12 बजे से
चीफ मिनिस्टर के लिए मेरा एक ही संदेश है कि वो राज धर्म का पालन करें.
हार्डवेयर वालों की सोच क्या होती है, हार्ड वर्क वालों की सोच क्या होती है.
अरे ये ना पंजाब की खुशबू.